Between 1970 and 1975, a black Dodge Challenger appeared on Detroit streets, destroyed every car that challenged it, and vanished before anyone could ask questions. No name, no face, just wins. The car became known as the Black Ghost, and for nearly 40 years it was considered an urban legend. Then in 2014, a person walked into a Detroit garage, saw an old Challenger sitting under the dust, and asked one simple question that would crack the mystery wide open. This is the story of how the most untouchable street racer in Detroit history stayed hidden for 4 decades, and how the truth finally came out when nobody expected it. The legend starts on Woodward Avenue in the early 1970s. Every Friday and Saturday night, hundreds of muscle cars lined up looking for competition. Chevelle SS models, Plymouth Road Runners, Corvettes, GTOs, everything fast Detroit ever built showed up with one goal: prove you're the quickest. Money changed hands, reputations got built or destroyed in seconds, and certain cars became famous just by winning consistently. Then sometime around spring 1970, people started noticing a pattern. A black Dodge Challenger with a white stripe was showing up, winning races and disappearing immediately. No celebration, no hanging around, just gone. The first few times nobody paid attention because new Challengers were everywhere in 1970. But this one kept winning. Not just winning, dominating, beating cars by multiple lengths that should have been competitive. After a few months, the racing community gave it a name: the Black Ghost. The name fit perfectly because the car operated like a phantom. Appear out of nowhere, accept a challenge, destroy the competition, vanish for weeks. Nobody knew who was driving, nobody knew where the car came from. Nobody could predict when it would show up next. The mystery fed the legend, and the legend grew bigger every time someone told the story. Here's what people remembered about racing against the Black Ghost. The launches were flawless every single time. That 426 Hemi engine made so much torque that spinning tires and losing traction was easy if you weren't careful. The Black Ghost never spun, never stumbled, never missed a shift. Perfect execution from the moment the race started until it crossed the finish line. Competitors would blow their tires off or bog their engines while the Black Ghost just hooked up and pulled away like it was on rails. Curtis Neal was there during those years and remembers it clearly. It was beating everything. This car was the king of the street in those days. That wasn't one person's opinion, that was consensus. Everybody who raced Woodward Avenue, Telegraph Road, or Stucker Street during the early 1970s knew about the Black Ghost. Some people raced against it and lost. Others watched it destroy their friends. A few smart ones refused to race it because they knew they'd lose money. The theories started immediately. Some people swore the driver was a professional drag racer running under a fake identity to protect his reputation. Others bet it was a Chrysler engineer testing prototype parts on the street before they went into production. A popular theory claimed it was a wealthy car collector who bought the fastest Dodge built and hired a professional driver to race it. The wildest theory suggested it might be a cop, which would explain why the car never got caught despite racing illegally for years. That last theory was closer to truth than anyone realized, but nobody took it seriously at the time. The idea that a Detroit police officer would risk his career in Pension Street racing seemed too absurd to believe. Cops arrested street racers, they didn't participate, or so everyone thought. By 1975, the Black Ghost stopped appearing. No final race, no explanation, just gone. Weeks passed, then months, then years. The car never came back. People who raced during that era never forgot about it, though. The stories got passed down through generations. Fathers told sons, veterans told newcomers, and the Black Ghost became part of Detroit street racing mythology. The car that never lost, driven by someone nobody could identify, disappearing at the peak of its dominance. For 39 years, that's where the story ended. Just a legend with no evidence, no proof, no way to verify anything. Woodward Avenue, Cruising got banned in the 1990s. The automotive industry collapsed and rebuilt. Muscle cars from the 1970s became expensive collector pieces instead of cheap used cars. The culture that created the Black Ghost faded away, taking most eyewitnesses with it. By 2014, finding proof seemed impossible. Then everything changed because of a mechanical problem. Godfrey Qualls needed work done on an old Challenger his father had owned for decades. The car had been sitting in a garage since 1977, barely driven, mostly forgotten. Gregory didn't know much about its history, beyond the fact that his father bought it new in 1969 and then stopped driving it after a few years. He brought it to a family friend named Alonzo Heron, who had mechanical skills and could diagnose whatever issues 4 decades of storage had created. Alonzo started inspecting the car, black paint showing age, white stripe across the tail, black vinyl roof with textured grain, 426 Hemi engine visible when he popped the hood, 4-speed manual transmission with Hurst pistol grip shifter, the overall presence of something significant, not just another old Dodge. Something about it triggered a memory from 40 years earlier, a story he'd heard dozens of times about an unbeatable black Challenger that dominated Detroit streets and then vanished. He turned to Gregory and asked the question that would crack the mystery open. Is this the Black Ghost? Gregory had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Alonzo explained the legend. Back in the early 1970s, a black Hemi Challenger terrorized Woodward Avenue, never lost a race, and disappeared mysteriously around 1975. The car sitting in front of them matched every description perfectly. Black paint, white stripe, Hemi engine, the exact model and year. The odds of 2 cars matching that profile in Detroit were basically zero. Gregory was stunned. His father had never mentioned street racing, never bragged about victories, never told stories about the old days. Godfrey Qualls had been a respected Detroit police officer who worked traffic enforcement and later did community policing for 37 years before retiring in 2007. The idea that he'd secretly been Detroit's most legendary street racer seemed impossible. But the car was real, the timeline matched, and Alonzo was certain about what he was looking at. Gregory started digging into his father's past. He talked to family friends who had known Godfrey during the 1970s. He connected with people who had been active in Detroit's street racing scene back then. Slowly, confirmation came from multiple sources. Yes, Godfrey raced. Yes, that was his car. Yes, he was the Black Ghost. The secret his father kept for decades was real, and the proof had been sitting in a garage the entire time. Here's what Gregory learned about his father's double life. Godfrey Qualls was born in Detroit and served in the U.S. military, earning a Purple Heart before joining the Detroit Police Department as a motorcycle traffic enforcement officer. Being a motorcycle cop meant he understood performance and handling at a level most people never reached. He knew what speed felt like, how to read road conditions, how to control a vehicle at its limits. On December 5th, 1969, Godfrey walked into Reynal Brothers Dodge dealership and took delivery of a brand new Challenger RT. The specs made it clear this wasn't a daily driver. The 426 Hemi engine was the somewhere most powerful option available, famous for making massive torque. The 4-speed manual gave complete control. The Super Track pack added a Dana 60 rear differential with 4.10 gears and Sure Grip limited slip, built specifically for aggressive launches and maximum traction. Total cost was between $4,000 and $5,000, serious money for a cop's salary in 1969. The car was triple black paint, black vinyl roof, black interior. The only contrast came from a white stripe across the rear panel and small African flag decals on each front fender. Godfrey also had a custom ignition kill switch installed on the driver's side front fender, an anti-theft measure necessary in Detroit's high crime environment. This particular configuration, a Hemi-powered RTSE hardtop, was rare even when new. Only about 50 50 to 100 units were ever built with this exact combination of options. By spring 1970, the Black Ghost was racing. Godfrey's strategy was brilliant and risky in equal measure. He would show up at Woodward Avenue, Telegraph Road, or Industrial Stucker Street when conditions were right. Accept a challenge, win the race, collect his money, and disappear before anyone could ask questions or police could arrive. No socializing, no hanging around burger joints with the crowd, no building friendships that might expose his identity. Just race and vanish. Being a police officer gave him advantages nobody else had. He knew patrol schedules, understood how police responded to racing complaints, and could read situations to know exactly when to leave before trouble showed up. That insider knowledge kept him racing for years without ever getting caught. Not once. No tickets, no arrests, no close calls that anyone remembers. He threaded the needle perfectly between two worlds that should never have overlapped. The racing continued through the early 1970s, with the Black Ghost maintaining its reputation. Every race was a win, every appearance added to the legend, and the driver's identity remained completely unknown. Then around 1975, the sightings stopped. The car vanished and nobody knew why. The real reason was military service. In 1977, Godfrey rejoined the military and served as a Green Beret for 3 years until 1980. He stored the Challenger in his garage before leaving and never raced it again after returning. The car sat dormant for the next 34 years, accumulating dust while its legend grew larger with every passing year. Godfrey continued his police career after military service, eventually retiring in 2007 after 37 years with the Detroit Police Department. He was known for community-oriented policing, building relationships with locals, avoiding the aggressive enforcement approach that created enemies on the street. People respected him, trusted him, and had no idea he'd once been the most feared street racer in Detroit history. Godfrey Qualls passed away in 2015 at age 76. He never publicly discussed his street racing past, never sought recognition, never told the stories at car shows or cruise nights. He kept the secret completely, taking most details to the grave. Only the car remained as evidence, and even that sat hidden in a garage where almost nobody saw it. Here's what makes this hunt so remarkable. For 39 years, the Black Ghost was just a story. No photos existed from the racing era, no video footage captured any runs, no magazine articles documented victories because street racing was illegal and publications avoided covering it. The car lived entirely in memory, kept alive by people who were there but had no proof to offer skeptics. The hunt wasn't investigators tracking down clues or journalists chasing leads. The hunt was the car hiding in plain sight for 4 decades while its legend grew, waiting for someone to make the connection between the myth and the physical object gathering dust. When that connection finally happened, everything else fell into place almost immediately. Some people still question the undefeated record because no hard evidence exists beyond eyewitness testimony. A stock 426 Hemi Challenger ran mid-13 second quarter miles, quick but not unbeatable. Detroit's scene in the 1970s had heavily modified cars that should have been faster on paper. The counter-argument points to driver skill, perfect launches, and strategic race selection. Godfrey wasn't just mashing the throttle hoping for the best. He was executing flawless technique while many competitors had more power but less control. Godfrey's story adds context about race and policing in 1970s Detroit. He was a black police officer working in a city with deep racial tensions following the 1967 riots. Street racing gave him a space where he was judged purely on skill rather than race or profession. He beat everyone equally and earned universal respect by being the fastest, period. His decision to walk away in 1977 makes sense. Green Beret service required complete focus. Street racing carried risks of arrest, injury, or death. He proved what he wanted to prove, earned the reputation he sought, and moved on. That discipline reflected the same qualities that made him successful as both a racer and a police officer. The fact that Godfrey never bragged shows remarkable restraint. Most people who achieve something noteworthy want recognition. He kept silent for decades, never seeking attention, never trying to monetize the story. He simply lived his life and let the legend exist independently of his identity. That humility humility makes the story more compelling because it wasn't about ego, it was about proving something to himself and moving forward. Gregory's decision to reveal the Black Ghost honors his father's memory while preserving automotive history. Without that revelation, the car might have been sold as just another old Challenger with its significance lost forever. Instead, the story got documented while eyewitnesses were still alive, and the car received recognition as one of the most significant muscle car survivors in existence. So there it is. The hunt for the Black Ghost ended in 2014 when a family friend recognized an old car and asked one question. The answer exposed a secret kept for 39 years and proved that Detroit's most untouchable street racer was real. Godfrey Qualls dominated the scene, walked away undefeated, and kept silent his entire life. The car survived to tell the story, and now the legend lives on with proof it really happened. What do you think about a cop being Detroit's most legendary street racer? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for the next story, and thanks for watching.